versus Rugal!
And welcome back, everybody. Once again, I'm TJ, joined by the Admiral. That's Admirable. And Nathan, it's just about Hearthstone time.
It is just about Hearthstone time, indeed. And buckle in for this one. It is not going to be a quick match. The games could end around the turn 9, turn 10 point, but these two guys are thinkers. They're really good. They got slow decks. I'd get prepared for this one.
Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our players. First up, from South Korea, please welcome to the stage, Jinsoo. The sage from the mountaintop is what they call him in South Korea, or close to it.
The guru.
The guru. And his opponent from China, it's Rugal. He's a control specialist who does very well in open tournaments in China.
저는 한국에서 온 진수입니다. 우승하기 위해 왔습니다. 제가 조금 우세에 있다고 생각을 해요. 상대는 제 아마 도적을 밴할 것 같고, 그러면 아마 비슷한 라인업, 비슷한 직업끼리 만나게 되는데, 아마 근데 나머지는 비슷하지만 저는 빅스펠 마법사가 있고 상대는 도발두루가 있기 때문에 저한테 좀 유리하게 될 것 같다, 그런 생각이 있어.
控制法可能我觉得在这次比赛会比较厉害，但是只有5个人带了控制法。
And now he is joining us in Los Angeles. Yeah, it's quite amazing to see Jinsoo come this far.
我的卡组跟他的卡组有3套是一样的，然后真正打起来，可能我们半选以后，可能我们的会完全3套卡组在打镜像对决，所以我可能跟他是势均力敌吧，5-5开。我可能自己，因为我个人就比较喜欢控制卡组，然后平时玩的控制卡组也比较多，所以我并不会对这种比较长的对决会感到有压力。
Up next, Jinsoo versus Rugal!
And we're back, and I'm excited for this one, Nathan. There was a bunch of sort of analysts, I suppose, on Twitter or on social media who were doing deck breakdowns. And they were doing some analysis on matchups. And this was one of the closest spreads out of any of the matchups. They have slight differences in their lineups, but both very control-oriented and both bringing the Control Priest, which was a rare choice for the tournament. So this one's going to be a barn burner.
It is kind of interesting to think about how their lineups are very similar, because Jinsoo just hasn't brought Druid to the tournament. He figured that Druid was going to get targeted, and I guess couldn't find a lineup that fit with either Token Druid or Spiteful Druid within that. So not bringing the Druid to the tournament, I think, is already just a big standout piece. But despite that, that is the similarity that they share is the other 3 decks across the board. I mean, they are pretty close to identical. There's a little bit of differences where you look at like the Mind Blast Priest, and Rugal's got a copy of Mind Control in there, and Jinsoo has a copy of Night Scale Matriarch. It's a 7-mana 4/9. It says whenever one of your minions is healed, you summon a 3/3 dragon. That's a very unique card that's in there, but I think it's actually quite good in that mirror match where you're fighting for value constantly, and it's really the first player to take the board, then connect with minions, I think, that has the advantage.
Yeah, connecting with minions is the big part. There's a little bit of a liability with that card when speaking in terms of Psychic Scream, but sometimes even putting additional dragons into your deck can be a benefit for Dustbreaker in some rare cases, but it often offers more board pressure than Primordial Drake. Maybe not as many defensive tools, but often in matchups, especially with what Jinsoo was expecting, you don't need those defensive tools. You just need to get on the board a little bit heavier and start pushing that damage, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think something important to note too is that with Psychic Scream, that matchup does have some potential to go to fatigue. If both Shadow Reaper and Anduins are buried very deep into the deck, or players fail to find Mind Blasts from Shadow Visions, a lot of times it is just minion pressure, kind of running into each other over and over again until there's very few resources left. So drawing cards and Psychic Screaming too much stuff can also be a liability in that match. The big thing to really talk about is that there's so much thinking across the board between the 2 decks that a lot of these games you should expect to go late, and have the little decisions throughout the game matter a lot.
Yeah, and you can see the differences here in their lineups, being the Taunt Druid for Rugal and the Miracle Rogue for Jinsoo. Jinsoo kind of made a very interesting meta call where he has quite a few decks that do very well against Taunt Druid, but he didn't bring the Taunt Druid himself, so he's not as vulnerable to the players in the field that are targeting that deck. So it's a very interesting take on sort of countering the meta, where he's not bringing the quote-unquote strongest deck in the field with Taunt Druid, which we saw actually isn't the strongest deck.
Correct. Well,
But
not
he's
when it's
bringing-
targeted anyway.
Not when it's targeted. That's a good point to make. But he's bringing a lineup that's kind of strong against the control, but still has some game against aggro with both Control Priest and the Expel Mage, while not being necessarily aggro counters, can definitely hold their own.
And that's been a big point for Jinsoo and a lot of his tournament success recently. You know, recently he's been seeing a ton of it. He actually decided very recently to begin pursuing competitive play. And I believe his quote was, "I decided I want to become a professional, so I became a professional."
That's right.
And a lot of that success he attributed to being able to outguess his opponents during the deck building stage of tournaments. And that is really where a lot of games are won and lost, is just what you prepared to bring, and then how your lineup was crafted against what you expected your opponents to be able to do against you. And so not bringing Druid here, having Miracle Rogue, the one thing that does scare me is during his interview, he also said, "I'm pretty sure I misbuilt my Miracle Rogue." He's got one copy of Gadget and Auctioneer and one copy of Sprint. Said he'd seen some other players do it, but he couldn't really figure out a reason why he did it himself.
Yeah, he just submitted it because he saw that other players were having success with it. But then when he thought about it after the fact, he said it's better to either put 2 Gadget and Auctioneers or 2 Sprints. He didn't feel comfortable with having one of each because they're more susceptible to being, sort of dead in the hand, and you're much less all in on a single game plan. A lot of times Gadget and Auctioneer is coupled with more anti-control tools, whereas Sprint, oftentimes it allows you to just get on the board a little bit quicker against faster decks in combination with preparation. So
one of the things that I like about the Sprint package the most in there is with the spiders and being able to send them immediately. So we'll get in that match when it comes along. But right now we're kicking off with a Priest Mirror match, and again, buckle in for this one, where it is the little decisions that really add up to a lot. Like, a lot of times you look at Northshire Cleric and you play this on turn 1. In this matchup, playing this on turn 1 can be a disaster.
yeah.
Every little thing is going to be taken into account for these two.
Yeah, Jinsoo also mentioned, you talked about how, not so long ago, this was his first playoff appearance in 2018 for the summer playoffs. And you talked about how he just basically decided to become a pro. Qualified for the Wild Open earlier this year, made it all the way to the finals in Los Angeles, where he took the runner-up position at the international finals. And now he's here. And he said he watched a lot of Tyler's streams.
Yeah.
Formerly a European player, now with his move to Vietnam, is part of the Asia Pacific region. And Tyler is kind of the epitome of hard work. He grinds 3 ladders a season, constantly is up there in the top ranks. At one point he held rank 1 on all 3 servers simultaneously.
Yep.
So pretty big achievement, and if that's any indication of where Jinsoo got his work ethic for Hearthstone, that's quite a big deal.
I'll top that off with Tyler picked Jinsoo for his packs.
Cool.
Choose your champion.
Yeah.
I also wanted to point out the Wild Pyromancer. This is a card you typically hold in your hand, and now have chosen not to in this match.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Just look for lots of unintuitive looking things in the matchup.
Yeah. But let's take a look at some of Rugal's tech cards, and these are all basically in there to deal with Taunt Druid. Mind Control was a tech that was included in Control Priest to be able to steal Hydronox to completely remove it from the pool. Same thing with Cabal Shadow Priest, and Silence is in there for a very similar reason.
Yep.
But the one glaring weakness against Jinsoo's lineup is he does not have Taunt Druid. Mind Control, I don't see too many great targets where you're going to be able to spend 10 mana to steal one of your opponent's minions and feel good about it.
Well, that depends on what kind of game state he gets in, right? And that's really the whole thing with the late game decks, is their entire game plan is dependent on what kind of situation they find themselves in moving towards the mid stage of the game. If you're under pressure, you have to be on the defensive constantly throughout. That's where those decks tend to struggle. If you look at the way that this matchup is lining up, though, Mind Control, I think, is great against pretty much everything except Jinsoo's Rogue. Even down to like the big Spell Mage matchup, if that was even a possibility. Ban that away, I believe.
I don't know. Against Control Priest, really the only Mind Control target is Alexstrasza. And if they Alexstrasza and you spend your whole turn Mind Controlling, you're probably dead.
I mean, I'll take a Primordial Drake.
I suppose, but
I'll take a 4/6 Skulking, guys. Anything you can take. I mean, your opponent's typically going to have one minion out anyway.
yeah, I feel like you'd be in a much better situation if that card was additional cycle or an additional threat of your own. If he could just play a second Primordial Drake, which he, well, I guess he does have one, but if he plays like another big minion early on in the game, then I feel like that's better. Or a second Acolyte of Pain to cycle through.
Silence picked up off the Shadow Visions, and that's a pretty hefty one there.
Yeah, so we do see that tech card coming in handy in this matchup. The Silence was a good metagame call as well.
Let the pain speak to
That's
me.
basically in place, though, of the Master Spell, which is sort of a common inclusion now. It's just cheaper and allows you to do more things in the same turn.
Look at this interesting turn from Jinsoo as well. I mean, look how quickly he played the Acolyte of Pain right after this. It's as though he knew that if Rugal had Silence, he would silence the Twilight Drake. And as a result, doesn't really care. He's like, I don't need that card to win the game. What I need to do is draw a lot of cards. I need to find Shadow Reaper Anduin. I need to keep the board under control, not have a 4/7 on board.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting to, how quick Jinsoo made that play and then followed it up because, the first 2 turns of the game, it was to the rope.
Well, Rugal has put a decent amount of early game damage onto Jinsoo.
Must consider.
It's only really relevant if you can keep sticking that damage over and over again. Because if you expend a lot of resources to deal early game damage, but then don't follow it up, the priest is just going to be able to heal back up. And effectively, you've traded resources to deal damage while your opponent has just used resources to remove the board and to draw cards. So if that's the case, I like Jinsoo's position here. But now that he takes over the board, it's on Rugal to try and continue to mount up that pressure. And he does have Cabal Shadow Priest on 6 to be able to steal the Acolyte of Pain. And I assume Jinsoo's going to Power Word Shield the Dustbreaker here, and he does. Because he knows that Cabal Shadow Priest is in the deck for Rugal.
It's also just strong against Dustbreaker this way. Power Word Shields, the Acolyte of Pain just loses both.
Yeah, that's true.
Change your mind.
And if it gets stolen, you just buffed your opponent's Acolyte of Pain.
Exactly.
Those all sound bad. I don't want to do those things. I don't want to lose both my minions, and I don't want to buff my opponent's minions. That's just smart.
You're so wise.
No guru.
Jinsoo, however, he's quite a calm individual. We spoke with him earlier last week. I believe it was on Sunday or Monday, and he was just kind of calm, chill
Dude.
Yeah, and his translator, who is the Hearthstone esports lead for Korea, he said that in Korea, a lot of players refer to Jinsoo as the guru because he plays control decks. He's very wise and introspective.
So he was quiet but feared.
Yeah.
The players there know how good this guy is.
Yeah.
And I've watched him play a number of times on stage now, and I've been very impressed with what I've seen from Jinsoo in my time watching him.
Even here, no obvious play.
Speak for yourself.
He can clear the board with Dustbreaker. I mean, there was ways for him to draw cards of his own.
The thing about it is you take this turn to think about what you're going to do in the future turns.
Yeah.
This turn I don't think was really the difficult one. It's when he moves into turn 7 and doesn't have anything apparent. And in turn 8, he doesn't have anything apparent because you don't know what your opponent's played yet. So you have to visualize those board states and really come up with what's going to be strongest in those situations. So, being able to piece together a game plan where when that final card is played, you end up ahead, that's a big deal. And then also just the fact that he drew Alexstrasza that turn. I mean, now he's got a pinpointed plan. Where he's been on defense this whole game, he can make all of that time up with just the Alexstrasza setting Rugal down to 15.
Yeah. 2 big cards missing from both players' hands, though, that are crucial to win condition in this mirror matchup is Shadow Reaper Anduin. It's not as, black and white as it used to be with the Raza Priest metagame, where in the Priest mirrors it was all about cycling as fast as you possibly could to get Raza and Shadow Reaper Anduin online to machine gun down your opponent.
Yeah.
It's much more intricate nowadays because of the fact that the hero power costs 2. You can't amount all that burst in a single turn. It's still a lot. You can deal 19 in a single turn, but you can't deal those crazy amounts with Prophet Velen that you used to be able to, especially in combination with Radiant Elemental and some cheap 1-mana spells. But definitely still a crucial part of the deck, especially since none of these decks pack, or oftentimes don't pack Shadow or Death. But actually, Rugal does have a copy of Shadow or Death in his deck.
And I think it's smart right now as well. Thinking about the matchups that you're going to be toughest against, even Warlock's one of those popular decks in the field. And Mountain Giant's one of the scariest cards you face. So I think it's wise to have that option in there. Not so good in this matchup, but I'd say across the board, it's a vital tool.
Yeah. This one between Shadow Visions and Massive Spell, I believe. Shadow Visions gives him that chance to grab the second Mind Blast from his deck. But Massive Spell also has a chance to draw either Shadow Visions or Mind Blast. So he was thinking, well, do I need the silence? And really, Primordial Drake, in order to push through damage, is the only card worth silencing. That plus Twilight Drake.
Yeah. Just a big one of it, too, is that you're trying to fetch the other Mind Blast from your deck before you draw it.
Yeah.
So being able to have access to 3 or 4 Mind Blasts is a very important tool a lot of times in the matchup, where you are facing down Shadow Reaper Anduin, your opponent can deal exactly 14 damage with 2 Mind Blasts and 3 Hero Powers. The third Mind Blast, though, that ups that to 19.
Yeah. And another thing to account for in this matchup is both players have decided to include 2 Divine Hymns in their deck. Pretty common inclusion, but it is worth noting because they will have that little bit of burst healing the later the game goes.
First big point of the game, and Jinsoo now is facing a decision of where to go with this. And Primordial Drake is just such a tough minion to deal with in this deck because, I mentioned it early at the start that Psychic Scream can be a liability in this matchup, where if both players' Shadow Reaper Anduins are buried very deep, there's not a lot of damage output potential. And so fatigue becomes like an actual thing. That's quite rare, but it is something that you have to think about, because once you reach that point, it's too late. You can't make up that decision in hindsight. And so where Jinsoo decides to go with this, I think, tells us a lot about how he feels this game is going to pan out likely.
In the mirror matchup, fatigue becomes much more likely when both players have similar decks, similar techs, because they have the same game plan, and when both players are trying to do the same things, they're trying to counter the same things, which means that a lot of times you see card for card battles, which is more likely to go to fatigue.
Players just laser focused on this one. This is such a tough turn for Jinsoo, because this is a fork in the road where he's going to find out which way he decided to go 5-6 turns from now.
Yeah.
He can't see that right now because there's still so much for Rugal to have to play, and then the cards he has to draw is just, he's decided to just go face up with it. And I think this is probably his strongest play. This is a turn before Rugal has access to mind control. This is about as good as it's going to get, I think.
Yeah, the Primordial Drake going to get worse as the game goes on because of that mind control. And also, you shuffle 2 cards back into your opponent's deck. You talked about fatigue to be 4 cards behind. And Primordial Drake is a minion that you don't really want to see again later. No. Because minion damage actually is very relevant in this matchup. You almost need to push minion damage at some point in the game in order to achieve victory. And so if you don't deal with the Primordial Drake now, you will have to deal with that Primordial Drake later. So you might as well just try and overcome that before it gets to the stage where he doesn't have the options to deal with it on board.
Another big one, too, is that the Cabal Shadow Priest from Rugal's been used. So the Primordial Drake's just so much safer in this spot. Normally, it would be this, and then Cabal Shadow Priest is a big worry of yours. Here, it's still kind of a worry because it's just setting Jinsoo so far behind on board, but I don't think this is the worst thing that could have possibly happened to him.
Mind control always weighing in the back of his mind.
That makes it so much harder to play the Matriarch ever.
Also, Alex Straza.
Yeah.
I mean, Matriarch here seems very good because you get to Matriarch and then heal up, summon a 3/3.
You're not necessarily protecting it from your opponent's board, though.
Yeah, that's true.
But then you lose a 2/8.
And then if your opponent has mind control, all of a sudden he has that Matriarch.
Yeah, that's
trades over your 2/4.
That's
and then you're left with a 3/3 to your opponent's 4/4, 4/2, 4/9.
Yeah, you're done at that point. So that's really, I think, where Jinsoo's head is at. Is you look at this board and he goes, how do I lose this
quickly?
But there's also the thing that could be playing in his mind where if mind control's out of the way, he has Psychic Scream in his hand to be able to deal with it if necessary. Maybe he checks
look at
for
this.
mind control.
He's going to scream the ooze into Rugal's deck. He doesn't want the Drake to be in there. He says, here, have this Acidic Swamp Ooze. That card's useless. So Jinsoo has a read here that Rugal does not have Shadow Reaper Anduin, and pretty rightfully so. That card likely would have been played by this point. And so now what Jinsoo's doing is he's trying to just make Rugal's deck quality lower so that way he's more likely to find Shadow Reaper Anduin first.
Very
cool
smart
play.
play. Yeah.
I think it's really cool.
He's just dealing with Rugal's board in the most minimal way possible in order to maximize his chances of finding Shadowy Branduin.
I wonder.
Skulking Geist is actually a problem card. The effect really doesn't do that much because...
4 attack minions.
Yeah.
It's a classic.
Because both players have used 1 Power Word Shield, I believe, so it's just destroying 1 Power Word Shield from both decks.
I think
Basically
Jinsoo,
just a
I
4/6.
think Jinsoo would use both.
Oh, maybe. But either way,
It's just a 4/6.
it's a 4/6.
It's kind of weird to think about, but that's a lot of how this matchup operates. You know, these are I think at their heart of hearts, combo decks.
Brings me back to the days where if you were any deck and played a turn 5 Spectral Knight against a Priest, they were dead.
They were pretty dead. I mean, just Azure Drake was pretty dead too.
Yeah, Azure Drake also. Azure Drake into Spectral Knight. Oof.
Heal and swap. I thought it was just heal pass, and I was like, whoo! So another opportunity here for Rugal to try to snag tempo and put that test on a Jinsoo.
Yeah, Primordial Drake, heal plus bump. Seems like a very good option. Rugal does have room to draw cards because he is a few cards ahead, and he kind of needs to cycle through his deck in order to find Shadowy Branduin. And to an extent, Alexstrasza. So there, he is thinking about that Acolyte of Pain. How do I make use of this
I wonder.
in the best way possible?
Well, you know, you think back to the Wild Pyromancer that he played early. I think it's strong to play it early. It's just this point you kind of look at it and you go, man, if only I had that Wild Pyromancer.
Quickly.
Oh, this is smart. Look at that. You silence off the effect of the Twilight Acolyte, restore your Skulking Geist back to 4 power. Jinsoo's basically in the exact same spot he just was.
Yeah.
Except now he's minus a Twilight Acolyte. That's a fairly important card in the matchup.
A very big, because in combination with Cabal Shadow Priest, which was drawn by Jinsoo this turn, has a huge potential to swing if you can steal a Primordial Drake or an Alexstrasza from your opponent. Now, no great way to deal with this whatsoever.
I wonder.
It's not like a huge threat. It's the compounding issue of it. It's if you don't deal with this, Rugal's going to play something else alongside it, and then you have to do something.
Yeah. Or Rugal doesn't play anything alongside it and just keeps pushing forward every turn. If Rugal sees that Jinsoo can't deal with this, why play more into Psychic Scream? Force him to deal with it before he plays something else.
It's a good point, too. I mean, you do have a mind control in your deck. It's hard for Jinsoo to really, you know, put a breaking swing on you.
Oh.
Awaken, my children.
Yeah.
Jinsoo is just, he's saying, you know what? Mind control is just going to be hard hitting. I got to do something.
Yeah, I have to play into it at some point in the game. I might as well play into it now when I'm not under pressure. Shadowy Branduin has not been played.
Yeah, I think it's wise. If you're going to take a big hit like that, not only is sooner mean that Rugal's less likely to have it, but it's also in a situation that you know you can get back under control if that takes place.
Few options for Rugal here. Can Holy Fire to just clear off the matriarch, deal with it on board. But that is kind of crucial damage later on in the game. Also, once you get into fatigue, it's a 10 health swing.
Yeah.
Once you've taken damage, which is a very big deal. The play that I'm kind of looking at, this might sound weird, just Primordial Drake and hit him. If he starts summoning 3/3s, fill his deck with stuff.
I don't mind it. I don't mind this either. Honestly, all of Rugal's plays, I think, just on face value, are quite weak.
Yeah.
And second Mind Blast drawn, Jinsoo's been holding on to this Shadow Vision for a very long time. And Mind Blast, I think, is a crucial one. You know, at this point, I'm starting to think, does he have something else in mind? Like, does he intend maybe to have this played like a fatigue game in some way? Or does he want the Shadow Visions to chain with the Shadow Reaper Anduin to buy more damage later on?
Yeah.
And, you know, again, I touched on the beginning of the match, but that's the thing to look at right there, is that now he's drawn the second copy of Mind Blast. He doesn't have that additional access.
Well,
It's such an important thing to me.
I think he's either looking to guarantee himself Holy
Let
Fire
me change your mind.
or to guarantee himself Divine Him. I mean, he could also be just trying to get...
Oh, here we go.
All right. He can also just keep chaining Shadow Visions, but
This was kind of weird, because he leaves himself... Is he just trying to create a wide board state and force Rugal to have something big? I don't know. Hit heal looked pretty good to me.
yeah. Does pick up
Another Shadow Visions.
Shadow Visions and then draws the last Shadow Visions that he copied from his deck with the Shadow Visions from the Acolyte of Pain draw.
Yeah. And so Jinsoo got the word that Rugal didn't have mind control. Decided to just make a big board. Rugal here looks pretty content on using Psychic Scream.
Yeah.
But now, again, put yourself back in that position with the Fatigue Race. You know, Rugal has 13 cards in deck because of Psychic Scream. But if that Anduin is still buried deep, stuffing these 5 cards back into Jinsoo's deck could actually be a benefit for him. And it's quite rare that the Psychic Scream minions into your opponent's deck is actually a beneficial thing. For your opponent, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there's two ways that you look at it. You're putting him further into the Fatigue Race.
Oh boy.
You're disadvantaging yourself. Okay, finds Mind Control. So now he's going to have 2.
I mean, I'm just looking at these Shadow Visions in hand, and I'm wondering what could have been if Jinsoo had found that third copy of Mind Blast.
I mean, this turn is...
It's pretty weak. This is when my turns take a long time as well when I'm playing. I'm just looking at it and I'm like, this doesn't do anything.
Yeah, Alex Traza is almost a liability at this point because you have 0 follow-up. You have no little damage, just a couple Mind Blasts. Shadow Reaper Anduin's not online yet.
Two Holy Fires.
Yeah. And I talked about, once you get to the fatigue point, Holy Fire is one of the best cards to have because it's a 10 health swing. You're dealing 5 to your opponent and you're healing 5. So where Mind Blast is cheaper and you can fit more in with it, Holy Fire oftentimes becomes more valuable because it forces your opponent to have even more additional resources. They have to have 2 cards to make up for that 1 card that you have. So when you're down to those limited resource battles, Holy Fire is an MVP. Or an NBC. Most valuable card.
I'm not going to lie, that this little Northshire Cleric looked a little bit suspect to me.
Why is that, Admirable?
What just was it doing?
It's hitting for 1.
But that could hit for 2 when the damage matters, alongside your Shadow Reaper Anduin. This card's not going to draw a card anytime soon. Well, I think it's about time. Oh, you know what? This is really smart from Jinsoo. So Jinsoo has been holding this Alexstrasza for the Shadow Reaper Anduin, of course. But if you play the Alexstrasza first, it means that your Shadow Reaper Anduin counters a mind control with it.
And then your opponent spends their full turn mind controlling.
That's really smart.
And if they don't mind control,
that means they're probably Shadow Word Deathing. But
that means they're probably Shadow Word Deathing. But if they don't Shadow Word Death, that means they're probably Shadow Reaper Anduin. But if they don't mind control Shadow Word Death or Shadow Reaper Anduin, they're
boom,
dead.
then you got them. But this is, I mean, this was one of the ways for him to actually counter mind control in this situation. So you were talking about how you didn't think the card was that strong, and I did. I see exactly where Jinsoo was going with that to try to turn that card into a liability versus him.
Yeah. Well, Northshire Cleric here dealt
I don't
one
know
and
about
healed
that.
for
That
4.
trade looks really suspect to me as well.
He doesn't want to take any additional damage, because if Jinsoo was to pick up an additional Mind Blast, if he had not traded into that Acolyte,
That's a good point.
or
That's a good
that Northshire Cleric,
Well-
he would have been at 15 with the 1 damage, and 3 Mind Blasts would have killed him.
Jinsoo has 25 damage from hand, plus the Shadow Reaper Anduin ticking, and Rugal currently has 5 points of healing. And he needs a lot more. And Jinsoo has Psychic Scream loaded, so minion pressure's not going to be the thing that kills him. This might be it.
Both players realize what the pan out of this game was and are kind of going all in at this stage.
And for Jinsoo, he doesn't even necessarily need to Psychic Scream. The fact that it's 2 3/2s, he can use Holy Fire and set up. You know, like, what's the max damage that Rugal deals? Well, that's now a math problem. You take a look at the Shadow Visions that was used, you know that he's been holding on to these 3 cards on the left side for quite a long time. Mind Blast is definitely on your mind at this point.
Yeah, so you are... It's likely that your opponent has 2 at this stage, but it's not likely that they have 3, because there's only 1 card that was drawn after Shadow Visions, and that's the Twilight Drake.
But if they draw it,
That's 15.
so he wants to stay safe even from that.
Yeah.
And, you know, backing this up with another Holy Fire, this is smooth sailing for Jinsoo if all he sees is that Twilight Drake.
Yeah, always got to keep the Divine Hymns in the back of his head, too, because both players have 2. So it's kind of tough to go all in on damage because of the fact that they have that additional burst healing, and Rugal has not transformed into Shadow Reaper Anduin yet, so he still has the additional 2 healing a turn. So the clock is quite weird, and Jinsoo is behind on fatigue.
To me, that spell's moving in here. I mean, he's got 15 points of healing and damage from hand, and those are 9 damage turns consecutively as well.
Yeah.
So he's taking care of the damage that Rugal's presented here, and he gets to start launching 9 a turn at Rugal's face. Rugal now has to find something to either end the game or keep himself defended, and with Jinsoo at 25, the ending the game part's really tough.
Ho, ho, ho.
So the question here is 2 damage or 2 healing.
And that's a big question.
I'm looking at the hand and I'm saying 2 healing.
Yeah, because there's still a very real possibility that those Shadow Visions cards are damaged. Now, he does gain the armor, so in order to play around the 15 mark, actually, in order to play, he needed to play around the 19 mark, so if he didn't heal, he would have been at exactly 19.
That's right.
So if there are 3 Mind Blasts, he needed to heal, so a good spot by Rugal, because he goes up to 21 now, so he plays around that 3 Mind Blast. But there's also the argument of, well, if he has 3 Mind Blasts, are you going to lose the game anyway? Do you need the damage to try and hit that break point to where if he doesn't have it, it's a matter of odds?
And I think Jinsoo is probably going to move in here. And the reason why is because right now he's protected from a double Mind Blast turn from Rugal's side. The double Mind Blast plus 3 hero powers is 14, the 5 on board makes it 19, and he's at 20. If he launches 9 to the face right now with the Holy Fire plus the hero powers, that sets Rugal down to that double Mind Blast range with his own hero powers to kill him right back. So in this spot, he can force Rugal to have either healing or a triple Mind Blast effect in this spot.
Yeah. And he knows, or if he's been hand tracking well enough, he should know that it is nearly impossible for Rugal to have 3 Mind Blasts, because the only Shadow Visions card that hasn't been played is the Mind Control, which
damage away.
Yeah, which was the only card on the far right of the hand. So
and no healing.
Yeah, it would have had to be that draw that picked him up the triple Mind Blast in order for Jinsoo to even have a chance. So a very nice spot.
I'm sorry, Jinsoo gained 5 light health there as well from the Holy Fire.
Yeah.
Apologies. So even triple Mind Blast wasn't enough. He was actually protected from triple Mind Blast. That was just checkmate.
Yeah. It would have had to be healing.
Very well done. Jinsoo is super patient with the Shadow Visions, and the Holy Fire healing made a big difference in this game.
It made a huge difference. You can tell his experience in this matchup. He played this deck in the playoffs as well to qualify here. He mentioned in his interview that he's very comfortable. We asked a lot of players that brought unconventional lists, Control Priest being one and Control Mage being the other. And it came down to sort of comfort as a fourth deck. And Jinsoo takes a pretty impressive game number 1.
A lot of players talk about comfort picks and how important they are, even when at times it can compromise the integrity of their lineup just a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that game demonstrates a lot of that process and,
Yeah.
and you know how much Jinsoo has practiced in this one. I have seen players just whip it for the Mind Blast and go, I'm just going to get him.
Yeah.
And Jinsoo knows that on average, that's usually not what happens. You know, Shadow Reaper Anduin can be very far down. If you don't see it on 8, it likely is. And that's where healing is paramount. Healing and damage at the same time in this instance.
Yeah, well, we've gotten to know how these guys play when it comes to Hearthstone games. Let's get to know them better outside of the game.
That is the series. Jinsoo is going to Los Angeles for the Summer Championship.
스위스 라운드에서 순이님이랑 서렌더님이라는 정말 강한 상대를 연속으로 만나서 이겼는데 그 순간부터 오늘 이거 올라갈 수 있다라는 생각이 강하게 들었어요.
He's been playing since closed beta, since the very beginning.
어느 정도 책임감이 있는 게 제가 스위스 라운드에서 5승 0패인 상태에서 2패를 연속으로 했거든요. 근데 제가 거기서 만약 더 이겼으면 한국 선수분들, 제가 이긴 한국 선수분들이 정말 많거든요. 근데 그분들이 타이가 부족해서 못 올라왔어요. 그래서 그분들 목까지 좀 열심히 하겠다는 생각이 있어요.
我叫卢卡，我来自中国。就是这次比赛也没什么压力，因为很多其他地区的选手也有很多是比较新的选手，可能只要好好打比赛，就发挥自己的正常水平就没关系了。相对于比较平淡的工作，我更喜欢炉石比赛中紧张刺激的感觉，然后努力去思考，去战胜对手这种感觉。我的朋友是比较支持我的，然后家人最开始可能不太理解，然后在我慢慢坚持，然后取得一定的成绩以后，家人也开始理解并支持我。因为可能是我比较，因为我第一次参加比赛，他们对我不了解吧，然后对我的风格都不太了解吧，意味着我会有更强的，意味着我有更强大的信心去面对以后的比赛，以后的炉石职业生涯。
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the HCT Summer Championship. We're about to get into game number 2 between Rugal and Jinsoo. And a couple of big things stand out to me in those video pieces. And the one from Rugal was, nobody really knows me, and I'm going to surprise everybody. And I always think back, you know, everybody starts somewhere when it comes to becoming a well-known Hearthstone figure.
Right.
And this is the place to do it, is at a global championship event. If one of these unknown players from any region makes it to a world championship, all of a sudden things completely change.
Yeah, and a lot of this, too, is kind of interesting to me because a lot of these players have been on the cusp of a breakout performance, just not quite had it.
Yeah.
This event right here changes all of that. It breaks it wide open. Brian was talking about it in the back, how cool it was. There were so many players here that were right on the cusp of that big victory, and they all seem to be in this tournament together.
Yeah. And these two are guys that, pretty recently made the switch over to saying, I'm going to be a full-time professional Hearthstone player.
It's a bold call.
It is
tough.
a bold call, yeah. I couldn't make that call. Granted, I'm not anywhere near good enough. Yet. If I keep watching Jinsoo and Rugal play, though.
Well, I'm hoping I learned something a little bit more about this one. Again, I played a lot of Big Spell Mage to start trying to prepare for this one. And this matchup is quite close, I would say.
I'm pretty sure Big Spell Mage is one of those decks where even if you played thousands of games on it, you still would not call yourself an expert.
Well, me, no. It's just such a weird, complicated deck. Like, so many times I would see a play line after the game was done. I'm like, how on earth am I supposed to know that's what's going to happen? I didn't see this outcome till like 10 turns later.
Yeah.
Because one of your small decisions can completely snowball the game. Since your spells are so powerful, it's hard to really see how the pan out goes until you start to go down that chain, because it's this butterfly effect. One little tiny thing at the start snowballs all the way down to whether or not you could even play your Jaina on turn 9 sometimes.
Yeah.
And so like this Voodoo Doll here, for instance, this is a play I found myself making a lot more often with Voodoo Doll than I thought I would. It's just, it threatens to poke at something and then also kill the thing that's on board. A lot of times you just hold on to Voodoo Doll hoping to blow up something big and significant, but Rugal just doesn't have a ton of those minions in his deck.
And he's got plenty of removal on his top end, like Meteor and Polymorph, to be able to deal with the low amount of big threats that Rugal does have. So I do think this matchup is Control Mage favored for a few reasons. One is that, as we talked about, Control Priest just doesn't have a lot of minions. They don't put on early pressure very often, and they have a ton of ways to gain armor and gain life in the late game. You really have to have things align as the priest. You have to have Alexstrasza and Shadow Reaper Anduin early and start chaining that damage together and really put the Control Mage on the back foot, because as soon as the Control Mage is the one with initiative, it becomes very difficult to win.
Yeah, that is a good point to make. Now, the thing to look at for me, though, is just the amount of damage output that Rugal has throughout the deck. I mean,
potential damage output is
quite
the
high.
caveat.
And so for Jinsoo, a lot of that health gain and armor gain you're talking about, it relies on Artificers, the Arcane Artificers being able to be coupled with spells. It seems kind of weird, but there are times when Jinsoo may have to consider playing Arcane Artificer and striking an empty board.
Yeah, and one thing that is missing from Jinsoo's deck that helps that consistency is the Witchwood Piper, to be able to almost guarantee the Artificers if you have not drawn them at that point. So
that Jaina is a massive draw, so Death Knight #1 has been drawn, and that puts Jinsoo, that's one of his extremely important cards in the matchup. If that is found early and Jinsoo's not under threat, that card may be enough to end the game by itself.
Yeah, armor, it almost guarantees that at some point in the game when your opponent plays Alexstrasza, you're going to be able to polymorph it, you're going to be able to ping it, you're going to be able to start healing out of range.
Yep.
You have small windows as the Control Priest where you can win, and those windows close very fast, so you need to take advantage of them. There is a pretty limited amount of data on this matchup, because it's not a matchup that's played very often on ladder. A lot of players don't go into ladder with Control Mage unless they're at the very highest ranks because of the agency that Control decks give you, or Control Priest even for that matter. Recently, the data does suggest that Control Mage is the favorite in this matchup, but we've known and seen time and time again that general ranked play data does not often translate to tournaments because of multiple reasons. One, highest level of play. Two, tech cards differ wildly in ranked play than they do in tournaments because of the fact that you're building a lineup to target specific things and not building a lineup to target general things.
Yeah, that to me is the biggest factor, is that in tournament play you get to craft a lineup to do something specific. So you know, all those things being the case, that is a very good argument you make, because I was thinking of it as more of the generalized matchup. I think when you take into account the fact that Jinsoo has an Alexstrasza and Big Spell Mage, it's not necessarily a common choice, but I wouldn't call it an uncommon one. I think that's just a big difference as well, because it keeps Rugal in a point to where any of that pressure that remains on board, he has to fear and respect it as well. So notice he used this Divine Hymn early on to draw cards. Of course, that's the most important thing in the matchup for him, is to be able to find Shadow Reaper Anduin and the damage to follow up. But in the case where Jinsoo is able to take board initiative late, the Alexstrasza is a massive threat to be able to end the game with. And so I think when you take that into consideration, Jinsoo might be slightly favored in that regard. That being said, when one player has their Death Knight and the other does not, it can very much look like an extremely lopsided matchup because of that.
I honestly just really like Jinsoo's position here. Pretty much only because he has a Frostless Jin and an Arcane Artificer in his hand.
Those are you know, the two cards I think we talked about the most.
Yeah. He does need ways to follow up. You know, I think about second Voodoo Doll, I think about Polymorph. Ways to kind of guarantee that he's going to be able to get pings off to stick aboard a water elemental, so Rugal will be forced to miss that window that I talked about where you have to kill your opponent. But there's going to come a time where Jinsoo has water elementals on board that are healing him, and Rugal has the option to push damage or Psychic Screen them back into the deck, and then he's giving up that damage and allowing Jinsoo that another chance to try and defend himself. So it becomes kind of tough as the game progresses, and it takes a while for the Control Priest to get to the point where they have that max damage potential. And you don't always have the ideal draw pan out. Sometimes you draw both Mind Blasts and Holy Fires before you draw Shadow Vision, so you can't get the redundant copies of damage. Sometimes Shadow Reaper Anduin's in your bottom 10. Sometimes Alexstrasza's in your bottom 10. And by that time, Control Mage may have their tools.
It's when you're in those situations that aren't ideal and how you handle them that oftentimes is the difference of, you know, a winning player and then being on the world stage amongst the elites.
Yeah.
It's being able to take that one critical win when you didn't have an ideal draw.
Jinsoo just playing it slow.
Time runs out on me.
The old staring contest. And Rugal's about to see the absolute one thing that he did not want to see. Turn 9 Jaina.
Do not fear.
Yeah, Rugal, a very stoic player who doesn't show emotion quite often, as we've seen.
But look at that posture chain.
It's kind of a wince and a posture change. That's all we need to know to get his feeling on what just happened. But
Time to draw some cards.
time to draw a lot of cards.
It's panic mode.
And this is, however, not one of the matchups where Holy Fire becomes that big of a deal. You just want cheap, heavy damage.
Oh, yeah. You're talking Mind Blast and solely Mind Blast off that Shadow Visions. Oh, you draw those cards.
He's just thinking about what's his play after that, because he will go to a full hand.
No, this is a 9-card hand.
Oh, did he have 5 before? Oh, yeah, you're right. He had 5 before.
The consideration is the trade or not.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Because he's given up Water Elemental on board. And that is a bit of a worry, but again, the game plan for Rugal is at some point clear the board, Shadow Reaper Anduin, and then have all the damage to follow up. And so that is solely what Rugal's looking for. So when he draws that second Mind Blast, that's a draw to the second Mind Blast, correct?
That is a draw of the second Mind Blast, yes.
That's bad news.
I must
Yeah, at a certain point, Rugal will basically not be playing minions. He'll be forcing Jinsoo to have healing from hand to not be vulnerable to Polymorph, Voodoo Doll, plus a ping.
Right, and so it's important in that case for Jinsoo maybe to not use this. But at this point, it's looking like Jinsoo says, you know what, you're just never going to have something on board to hit me with again.
Well, the armor does stick. It's not
Yeah.
like the armor's going to go away, right?
True story.
Even Alexstrasza, he's still going to have the 8 armor. So he's basically forcing Rugal to have an answer to this Arcane Artificer.
Cabal Shadow Priests are gaining your own armor.
Sure.
The thing about it is it's impossible for Rugal to actually win a fatigue matchup
Oh my goodness.
in this scenario.
Must consider.
Is there ever a world where you... Nah.
What?
Might control the Arcane Artificer.
Well, you know, your opponent's got a 3/6 on board, but if not, yeah, I think so. It's whenever you cast one, though, right? Isn't it?
I must consider.
Not after?
No, I'm saying just to get it off the board in the least efficient way possible while he's under the least threat possible.
Oh, Cabal Shadow Priest.
Yeah, but Cabal Shadow Priest, he
You're
has-
thinking with the Twilight Drake.
With the-
Acolyte, rather.
yeah, the Twilight Acolyte, yeah. I don't know.
They're playing the dragon from hand.
Jinsoo does have a low amount of resources currently. He's got 5 cards.
Whoa, 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 whoa. That hero power creating water elementals, that is not a low amount of resources. That is a
All right.
very high amount of resources.
Fair enough. Checkmate.
Yeah. I'm calling you out on that one. Don't think I won't, TJ.
Jinsoo, a ton of resources.
Time melts away.
Just rub it in, Jaina, why don't you?
Yeah. So Jinsoo can summon a water elemental with Flame Strike here.
If you can summon a Welly, you usually do. Weird.
Well, if he
only
pulls a 6 mana card, yeah.
so he's thinking specifically about pulling 6 or...
Yeah, so 4. He does have polymorphs left in the deck. If he hit a 4, he could have still got a ping on the Cabal Shadow Priest.
Well, we have a game here, TJ.
Okay.
That is super important for Rugal. That is the saving grace sight that now gives him that little dwindle of light at the end of the tunnel.
It does, because Jinsoo has not amassed, well, really anything. Even if he amassed the critical...
You were thinking armor total.
Yeah. I was thinking armor total, but I was thinking a big enough board. But now Rugal, he has time to draw onto Alexstrasza.
Time
He can clear the
melts
board the
away.
turn before Alexstrasza's. Actually, you make Alexstrasza first, so then you can clear the board after.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right now, Rugal, it's important for him because he's drawing Holy Fire and the 2 natural Mind Blasts. He can't Shadow Vision's another one. To be doing 2 things. Number 1, being patient for Alexstrasza, and then number 2, trying to use Shadow Visions in effective ways so that you don't float a lot of mana, but that you don't expend a lot of resources as well. So I think the ideal situation for Rugal here is actually being able to chip away armor or chip away board presence from Jinsoo, just
Time
chaining
is now.
Shadow Visions together.
His Shadow Visions really just don't have many targets left.
Well, he's got a Shadow Visions left in the deck, right?
He does have a Shadow Visions left, so he just wants to chain Shadow Visions for damage.
So if he draws Alexstrasza before he draws the other Shadow Visions, I think that he can be in a good spot. That Alexstrasza is super scary, though, so this will be a turn where Rugal has to do something about this. Well, spend all that time talking about something cool and then just second Shadow Visions. Yeah, let's just shut it down.
I mean, he's only got 6 cards left in his deck.
That's not the point.
He has drawn 9 more cards than Jinsoo this game. This one's kind of tough. You're not going to be really under threat, so you can spend a whole turn mind controlling.
Yeah.
But if you spend your whole turn mind controlling and then you're met with Voodoo Doll or Polymorph, and then another water elemental.
It's really a lot of it's just the pacing of the game, right?
Yeah.
You know, for Rugal, there's not burst damage in Jinsoo's deck. You know, 17 life is still a lot of life to work with. It looks like Rugal's, got plans to mind control something when there's not a water elemental on board, or maybe once he's seen more removal from Jinsoo.
Yeah.
But Jinsoo here can legitimately consider polymorphing his own Doomsayer and making a water elemental. I mean, that is a real consideration he can make. I think he'd rather find a bigger swing post Alexstrasza,
Yeah.
which is found now for Rugal. So, you know, this is pretty much coming down, I'd say, nearly every single time. With only 5 cards left in the deck, Rugal is on limited time against the fatigue clock as well. So, you know, having to think about killing the water elemental first, that's a lot of potential damage you sink into that.
Wow.
So it's the Psychic Scream first to clear the water elemental, is what Rugal's looking at. But this is where you start to second guess yourself too.
Yeah, because if you play Alexstrasza and then he polymorphs and summons a water elemental, then you get to Psychic Scream 2 back in the deck, and you're in the same spot the following turn.
The key, though, is that you just don't want counter pressure delivered onto you.
True, but
If there's not counter pressure, you're good to go.
I guess the counter pressure in this situation would be Sindragosa, Lich King, Baron Geddon, Dragon Caller Alana.
Well, no, what I'm thinking is just, you know, getting hit and the second water elemental combination.
True, yeah.
It just gives your opponent strong opportunities to do stuff. And so the second polymorph drawn, Jinsoo says, you know what? If he's going to Psychic Scream that, I don't know what he's doing. I don't want to find out. I want to make another water elemental and put him in the exact same situation.
And then if he Psychic Screams this one, then all of a sudden, Dragon Caller Alana just wins me the game on the spot.
And so when Rugal takes that turn that fast, I don't know if it's frustration at the notion or if he's like, he's just got all the removal. He's willing to polymorph his own Doomsayer. I have to do this. I know he's got more. But Jinsoo's turn is about as straightforward as it gets.
Yeah.
Heal as much as you can,
Time
prevent as much
melts
damage as you can, and hope that's good enough.
So he's going to go up to 18. Rugal's max damage next turn would be 15, I believe. Which
It's
is
2 Mind Blasts and 3 Hero Powers, 16 damage.
16, yeah.
And the second Water Elemental,
15 if he wants the 5 health swing on the backside, which doesn't seem likely because there's no burst in the big Spell Mage deck.
the thing about it is that Psychic Scream plus a Hero Power sets Jinsoo to 16, and that's exactly what Rugal has. So now if Jinsoo does not find a way to heal, which right now is second Arcane Artificer, that's game. Oh, Arcane Keysmith can prevent that killing blow.
Actually, no, because Counterspell's free, or Silence is free.
It can. It means that Rugal has to just have the presence of mind to silence first.
It can prevent it, but it's very unlikely because Rugal...
And here it can't. So
Yeah.
we got a tied set. Rugal, despite Alex and Anduin very deep into the deck, manages to walk away with this one.
Yeah, and very wise just to play around the Counterspell, throw out the Silence, absolutely no downsides.
And I mentioned the Arcane Artificer. Your armor sticks, but your opponent can chip away at it.
True.
All that damage he would have taken would have been healed back by Water Elementals, I think. And he would have found himself in a different situation.
He also would have forced removal out of the Arcane Artificer later in the game, which is when you're on a tighter clock. I think that's the play we look back at as the changing point in that series.
The
Could
little
have got
things.
more value out of it. But Rugal sequences his last few turns very nicely. And you said it, despite basically his key cards being in the bottom part of his deck, not getting extra damage from Shadow Visions, still manages to find the victory. And Jinsoo deep in thought thinking, where did I go wrong?
Timing is often more important than the actual power that you get out of something. Because your deck doesn't need to do everything. You just need to do enough.
Yeah.
So that Arcane Artificer, when it was played, did it do enough? Sure, it gained armor. It got a Cabal Shadow Priest. But the Cabal Shadow Priest turn was honestly pretty good for Rugal in that situation. If your opponent already has Anduin down and you're able to play Arcane Artificer and force your opponent to have something, that's a much different circumstance because if he's having to spend 6 mana to take it during a Shadow Reaper Anduin turn, that's very different. You know,
Or
sure,
even just to ping it.
just to ping it. It's still 2 extra health in that regard.
Which
where
could have given him enough time.
the damage at the time, in that small situation, didn't matter at all. Maybe you draw a second Artificer, you get both of them down with a big spell, and you're looking at 12 or 14 armor. It's such a tough thing for these matchups because that one moment changes the entire scope of the game.
All right, well, we're going to get into game number 3 in the moment, but we saw, you know, the kinds of decks that these guys brought to this tournament. So let's go ahead and hear their own thoughts on what they thought about the metagame coming into the Summer Championship.
The Hearthstone Championship Tour continues. It's go time! is the 2018 Hearthstone Summer Championship.
저는 한국에서 온 진수입니다. 우승하기 위해 왔습니다. 대회 이런 정말 e스포츠 대회에서 이기는 게 사실 전 나온 것만으로도 사실 되게 실감이 안 나는데 이긴다면 정말 제 꿈이 이루어지는 거죠. 보드 게임 같은 거 원래 좋아했는데 항상 보드 게임이 같이 할 사람이 필요하잖아요. 근데 하스스톤은 그냥 버튼 한번 누르면 그냥 모르는 사람이 아무 사람이랑 같이 게임을 할 수 있으니까 그게 참 좋은 것 같아요. 그렇게 사실 친한 친구는 거의 만들지 못했는데 뭐 이제 만들어 나가면 되죠. 침착함, 인내심, 그런 거밖에 딱히 없네요. 이길 수 없다고 생각한 적은 없는 것 같은데.
Hearthstone World Champion!
This will be, I think, the first APAC tour stop for season 2. I am cheering for Stars.
最大改变就是好像突然很多人都在台湾的人都认识。
It's a bunch of smart, cool people that you want to hang out with.
Gia, you need to tell us where's good.
Follow your nose.
The way the decks line up, I don't think he ever gets there is a thing.
That's it.
Wait,
That's gonna do
oh
it.
Oh my gosh.
Took a little bit of a risk.
我对炉石这款游戏的喜爱，还有对炉石比赛这种紧张刺激的这种状态，我比较喜欢。因为在提交卡组之前，我考虑到这次比赛可能会有很多人带偶数数和强等，然后我的 line-up 就是控制法、控制墨都打这两套卡组都比较好打，然后对阵快攻也有一定的优势，所以会带控制墨。我的牧师带了灭和精神控制，都是其他选手的控制墨都没有带这两张卡。我觉得创新比较重要，像小 T 这次带的唯一一套恶毒的，我就觉得这次就对这次环境就是非常好。像战火煞我就比较难打，可能因为我当时组这套拉普的时候，就考虑过，如果对手有战火煞，我就会手办战火煞。
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Summer Championship. By looking at these players, it may not seem like it, but this match is heating up with a 1-1 score and two very tough first couple games. This one is, I think this was going to go the distance, Nathan.
It definitely could. You know, the thing that I'm looking at to be the breaker is Miracle Rogue from Jinsoo. That deck is just so good against Rugal's lineup, it feels like to me.
Yeah, but we're going to get into this one. It's going to be the Control Mage once again for Jinsoo versus the Taunt Druid for Rugal. And this was the matchup that I think why the Control Mage was placed into, I believe, about 30% of lineups coming into the Summer Championship was because they thought Taunt Druid was going to be a popular archetype choice for many of the other players. It just does well against the deck. You have Interruption for Hadronox because of Polymorph, and just a lot of removal to get through waves of taunts, and it's just a big disruption plan.
And Skulking Geist.
Skulking Geist is good. It's one of the decks that can afford to play Skulking Geist.
If you land a Skulking Geist before your opponent has had an opportunity to naturalize a Hadronox, it is really difficult for them to utilize Hadronox. It's extremely difficult at that point.
And then if you've gotten a polymorph off, even if it's not on Hadronox, then you put a beast in the pool, so if it dies, witching hour becomes much less reliable.
Even a lot of times at that point, Rugal's just going to have to just play the Hadronox and hope that's good enough. You know, I've seen versions of Taunt Druid include a copy of Moonfire in them, so that they can use you know, a Spellstone and a Moonfire to kill stuff when they have to naturalize other things. I've seen players use, even in this tournament, Spirit Singer Umbra, so they can try to stick that into play and then play Hadronox and activate the Death Rattle at some point. But it's just every way you slice it, all of Rugal's stuff basically just dies to all of Jinsoo's stuff in a non-profitable manner.
Yeah, and you could tell Jinsoo brought this big mage. He really values preparation, and we had a chance to sit down and talk with him about his road to the championships, his identity as a player. So take a look.
I don't think of myself as a talented person.
그냥 많이
I work hard and I study hard.
그게
That's why I'm here.
Need a key?
I mean, when you just say, I'm going to become a pro player, you either have to be very talented or you have to work incredibly hard. Jinsoo thinks that he only has one of those qualities, and that's working hard, but I think a little bit of talent is thrown into the mix as well.
Yeah, I'll respectfully disagree with his analysis of that he doesn't think he's quite so talented. He's just a hard worker. I've been flat out impressed. But hard work, I think if there is someone a testament to hard work beats everything, it's just me. I'm dumb as heck.
Same. That's why they put us together.
Fist bump. Pair of flame strikes. Just thinning out the deck.
But both players have their sort of power cards in the matchup. Jinsoo, of course, Frosted Jaina, always great. Absolutely zero downsides. You still get the ping. You hold on to your hero power. Your ping is just much more powerful. Rugal has Oakheart, but missed some of that early ramp. And that's the big deal. So it's not going to be able to come out.
That Nourish is the first piece of ramp.
It is. And one of the ways you can win this matchup as Taunt Druid is you have early ramp, and then you just pressure your opponent. Yeah. You summon a bunch of 412s, and then they just can't deal with it. Or they have to use some of their crucial removal before Hadronox is played. They don't have time to play Skulking Geist. You can naturalize your Hadronox. You can res it before they even can disrupt it. That's how you win.
Out of my zone.
Or you just beat them up with 412s. One of the two.
I will say that Rugal really wished that Nourish was a Wild Growth instead.
A Wild Growth 3-turn skill?
Well, just even this turn, because the Nourish just occupies 5 mana on the following turn, and it gets him to basically the exact same point.
Yeah.
You know, if that was a Wild Growth now, we'd be looking at Lich King and Oakheart instead of Nourish into, goodness, his 3/3s and 2/2s are actually becoming a problem.
Yeah. I do like Rugal's.
He's going to choose to draw instead. Interesting.
Well, he's got Lich King next turn, and then he's going to be able to follow that up with Master Oakheart.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. I mean, his hand is quite weak.
Well,
just, you know, stuff to do.
The one thing that it did do was it gave him a chance to draw his second Dragon Hatcher, which would make Oakheart much weaker. That is number one. Also, there is the one possibility that he doesn't want to play Oakheart at this point because the game has gone on too long. Sometimes summoning Hadronox can be a liability because then you risk it getting polymorphed early on in the game. At this point, so much time has passed that maybe he wants to be able to naturalize his own Oakheart or his own Hadronox with taunts in the pool before Jinsoo has a chance to play Skulking Geist.
Okay, just hope your opponent doesn't have Skulking Geist.
Yeah.
Which he clearly at this point does not.
So obviously he keeps Oakheart because if he does get early ramp, then he wants to play that as quick as possible. But maybe he's thinking, once enough time has passed, it's too risky to play that because Jinsoo's had enough time to play Polymorph. I'm too behind. I need to play taunts, get them in the pool, and then naturalize right away before Skulking Geist has a chance to come out.
Well, Anti-Magic Shell is a big one. You know, I will certainly say that I think this is one of the cards that can put Jinsoo in a losing position, is the fact that, you know, he can't necessarily polymorph something that's very critical to polymorph.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of times for Jinsoo, you know, polymorphing Lich King is one of the best things you could do because it takes that out of that Death Rattle pool as well. I'm sorry, out of the taunt pool as well for the Hadronox Death Rattle. You know, that's probably one of the most important cards, and since Jinsoo's not really under threat, just go ahead and play Frosted Jaina. I mean, you don't need to efficiently kill the Lich King, it just needs to be dead.
Even if he is under threat. Sure, play Frosted Jaina.
Yeah, why not?
Maybe if Witch King was like the only minion on the board, sure, you can Meteor this turn, then play it next turn.
No, Jaina.
Yeah, Jaina every time. Give him 2 Lich King cards. I don't even care. What are you gonna do? Death Grip my Skulking guys?
Ooh.
Actually, that'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
They just hold in your hand for the rest of the game, and you just get to keep your 1-mana spells.
Second Dragon Hatcher.
Yep. And that was the worry I had with drawing the extra cards. O-Card is now much weaker.
Just 2 dragons.
But also, he was on 1 mana, so O-Card probably not a great play in that situation, because I think the turn that he plays O-Card, he's going to want to naturalize his own Hadronox at the same time.
Yep. And this is just one of the reasons I think that this issue compounds is when your opponent gets Jaina and you play Dragon Hatcher, Meteor just kills your Dragon and your Dragon Hatcher and summons a Water Elemental for your opponent. Like it's just like that one interaction, you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do and how do I win? Like that makes the game so much harder for Rugal now.
Yeah. Alright, well, we'll be able to get a Lich King, a Primordial Drake, and a Ironwood Golem.
Burns a card here as well.
From his Hadronox. Not quite.
Seven
cards.
Apologies.
Yeah, 7 in hand, so he's going to go up to 10. What's the 4th taunt? Oh, second Ironwood Golem, that's right. But this will force a board clear out of Jinsoo, because all of a sudden, if Anti-Magic Shell, now with 2 Lich King cards, he could push through, and Anti-Magic Shell becomes a big deal because without being able to ping anything, with everything having 2 more health, it becomes much more difficult to remove the board.
He does technically have the AoE in hand to shut that down for a number of turns, but
yeah,
killing Lich King is still a priority in this spot.
Yes.
I don't think you poly at this point, though.
Well,
there's already one in the pool. And now you're going to add 4 Ironwood Golems. I think you want a polymorph for maybe a cube if that hits.
Yeah, I think you're right. A polymorph was used already?
That's right. Wasn't it?
On what? I don't think so.
Maybe he didn't. No, he didn't. He didn't. I'm crazy.
He didn't. So I was thinking maybe a polymorph just to prevent
the second Lich King in the pool.
Yeah. And plus witching out, if he's witching hours right away before polymorph becomes an issue, if he would have a way to kill his own yeah, I don't know. That one's tough. But he's really just going wide on board here. He's got 3 Water Elementals trucking away.
It's such a tough spot to analyze. Like, I feel like Jinsoo is probably wise to hold on to all of his AoE and just use the resources he has now to clear this out. You know, if you can get rid of this in a reasonable way with what you have, what that means is your opponent never gets a push going that's strong enough to actually defeat you. You get to chain Blizzards into a Flame Strike and just keep wiping out their whole board. Eventually the waves run out. It's really the guessing game for Rugal. How does he clear up the board enough that he can prevent Water Elemental spawns? And when you're looking at 9 minions on board, that's usually math that is not easy to do, especially when you have to account for the range of cards that Jinsoo could have in response. Whew.
Yeah, every time I see a Lich King drawn, I give a woo also. Woo.
That was technically 2.
Woo, woo.
I must decide.
Jinsoo's plays are so good. Like, just, you know, pick one that's bad. I guess, like, Doomsayer Baron Ged. That's pretty bad.
Even then. Your opponent doesn't have 6 armor. They can't kill Doomsayer on board.
Time melts away.
Well, 3 armor.
Oh, 3 armor.
Yeah.
They don't even have 3 armor because you'll deal 2 damage to their face so they can't even hero power.
True story.
They have to expend mana.
I tried to pick a bad play and I couldn't do it. And that's a good
Arcane
thing for Jinsoo.
Artificer, Polymorph your own Arcane Artificer, hit your opponent in the face.
That's really bad.
Yeah, but this one's quite good.
Yeah, this blows up the board and makes a Water Elemental. That's pretty much what you're trying to do for the rest of the game. Blow up stuff and make Water Elementals. Rugal with 8 cards left. He's got 2 more cards that are fairly useless with the Wild Growth and Nourish.
But he also has 2 Witching Hours, a Carnivorous Cube.
Job done.
Another Branching Paths, I believe. A Wrath, a Naturalize, Spellstone.
But Jinsoo's got a Lich King.
Jinsoo does have a Lich King.
Woo woo. I actually think that Jinsoo might not need to attack with the Water Elemental in this position either. You know, seeing 2 swipes down, Rugal would need Spellstone, Naturalize, or a Lich King card to kill it. So, I mean, the Lich King card to kill it is quite likely. So I think there's a good chance he attacks and just tries to protect Lich King as much as possible. Because right now, Rugal doesn't have a way to kill it. If he Lich Kings and freezes that Primordial Drake, it is stuck to the board if Rugal doesn't draw removal.
And then if Rugal tries to make a big board to try and contest the Lich King the following turn, he's got Flame Strike.
Got Chain of Blizzards, got Meteor, Polymorph. He's got everything he needs to be able to handle what Rugal's going to throw at him. If Lich King sticks for a couple of turns, just that much more.
All right, well, you called it. Oh, never mind.
Woo.
See, I don't know if I like the ping on the Primordial Drake, to be honest. I kind of like the big face. I think you'd rather have it be at 5 health to Flame Strike or 2 Blizzards plus a ping to get it down.
See, that's the thing to me. I think that he wants to just blow stuff up.
Well, that's 2
Double
Lich Kings.
Lich King. Holy smokes. Oh my goodness.
There were 4 Ironwood Golems in the pool. So double Lich King was not guaranteed by any means. Picks up Army of the Dead and a Frostmourne. Now, those are 2 of probably the worst options because it's not often that you have 7 mana extra to just be able to equip a Frostmourne in almost any matchup as a Taunt Druid. And Army of the Dead, there's really no minions left in the deck for Rugal.
Plus the fatigue consideration.
Plus the fatigue consideration, yeah. He's basically removing 6 spells from his deck and doing nothing. That sounds pretty bad to me. Rather have Death Coil, even Obliterate.
I must decide.
Well, I will say the anti-magic shell is now looking quite scary.
Oh, yeah.
This might be some trade-off time for Jinsoo.
Oh.
I don't know, though. Like, could you just Blizzard Doomsayer this turn?
What are the spells left in his deck? He doesn't have expensive spells left in his deck. Flame Strikes have been drawn. Blizzards have been drawn. Meteors have been played or drawn. He's got a Polymorph and a second Dragon Fury in his deck. So his Dragon Fury is 5 damage or below. I mean, still good, but...
Wow, trades off Lich Kings. You know, something to look back to is Jinsoo when he played the Gluttonous Ooze earlier. Is there ever a world where you can hold Gluttonous Ooze just in case your opponent gets Lich King Frostmourne?
Well, you hope that they just don't have time to play Frostmourne, even if they draw it.
Well, sure. You're not exactly like putting the pedal to the metal with your control big spell mage deck, though. They'll typically have some time.
That's also true. But Anti-Magic Shell is going to put a real big stop to this party, and if he picks up a second one...
I think that's why Jinsoo traded as well. He knows that Anti-Magic Shell is really the problem. And so if that second one was there...
But there is 0 ways for Lich King to be dealt with again. Second Polymorph drawn, so that means Dragon's Fury is, I believe, guaranteed 5 damage. Because the only other spell that Jinsoo has yet to draw is second Dragon's Fury. He's used the first Meteor, has the second in his hand. He used the first Blizzard, has second one in his hand. And he used the first Flame Strike and has second one in his hand.
I'm looking at Blizzard Doomsayer, but you know the problem with that is if he runs into a cube or a Hadronox, yeah, even the Doomsayer is kind of a liability in this matchup.
Yeah. Well, at this stage at least.
Yeah. This is tough.
There is a beast in the pool now since the first polymorph has been played.
The time is now.
And 2 Hadronoxes have died.
Does that affect the pool? Multiple of the same title? Like, does Cornered Sentry put 3 versus 1?
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I was very confident with that answer.
You telling me that you're very confident with the answer tells me that you don't actually know.
Yeah. In fact, I don't think anybody can know for sure because confirmation bias exists.
Job done.
Actually, yeah, that's a weird. I don't know. We'll talk about that later. Lich King is still going to live for a turn.
I don't know, man. This looks... I'm not happy here if I'm Jinsoo. I am very upset.
Reality woven.
There is no second anti-magic shell, though. Is this 30 damage? 34?
There's 21 just showing on board.
So 2 branching pass. That's 4 each. That's 8 more. And then the Death Coil for 5. He can put Jinsoo to 3.
I think in that case, you would hero power instead.
Well, you need to kill the 1/2 is really the issue here.
Yeah.
I don't want that thing to live.
So what's the most efficient way to kill the 1/2?
Obliterate.
Obliterate.
Because you don't have to sink, 76 of your own damage from one of your sources into it.
So I'm honestly, I kind of want to make use of those branching passes now. There is a chance, there is a way he can set up for an almost guaranteed next turn lethal and also kill off the Arcane Artifice.
It's just the range of stuff is so wide, right? You think Baron-Geddon, you're thinking Dragon's Fury. Oh, this is really clever. Wait, did he already attack with...
Yes.
Well, why didn't he do the hero power first? He just missed a damage.
He did miss a damage. Miss a damage to face.
Maybe it's like intentional to try and trick Jinsoo.
No.
Because you have to, look at how much burst he has.
Ah, he's playing around Ice Block.
He's not doing that.
I think it's just a miss damage.
I'll tell you what, I have missed damage a lot of times just so that my opponent is like, what an idiot. And then got everything in hand.
Have you ever done that at the Summer Championship, though?
Me personally, no.
Well, that's the second polymorph. And that's a clever way to remove the 6-2.
But I'll tell you what, Jinsoo is about out of removal at this point.
But that Witching Hour, I suppose you're right. Even just Sleepy Dragons can get the job done here. Has he killed any minions with Frostmourne? Does that have any minions loaded up? He hit face last turn with it.
Nope, no minions in it. Jinsoo couldn't afford to make a water elemental there. I don't... Polymorph? Yeah, Polymorph Dragon's Fury. You still can't play the Doomsayer.
So the last 2 cards for Rugal are Witching Hour. He drew this first one this turn. The second one's his last card in his deck.
I wonder.
If he rips it, not guaranteed for Hadronox.
Are you sure? Is the last card a Nourish or a Polymorph? Oh, the Nourish is in his hand. I see it tucked right there.
Yeah, it is a Witching Hour. He's got 2 Witching Hours in his list.
You're right.
That's the only one. Oh, he got the sheep!
That honestly is really bad news too, because now you just feed a water elemental over to Jinsoo.
All right, run it back. And you can't death coil your own.
No, you can't, because it's a
It'll
healing.
heal it.
It's heal a friendly or damaged enemy. The Dragon's Furies are now dead. The only thing they do is fuel Alana.
Is this game honestly going to come down to whether or not the second witching hour?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Syndragosa's
He could play Syndragosa, ping off his own little egg.
Did you just realize that?
And gets Tinkmaster Overspark to polymorph.
That's where you have
the Hadronox again. Whoa.
I must decide.
He could find Toki Time Tinker and find a Reno Jackson to heal himself to full. Whoa!
Whoa!
I love Syndragosa.
Time is now.
Jinsoo's
played though.
He's more concerned with just healing. So the Baron Geddon plus the Jaina hero power. Every time you deal 2 damage to something, it's 2 more healing. Naturalize. I knew he'd used a Witching Hour.
Oh,
I knew it.
you're absolutely right.
I knew it.
Because he cubed it.
Dagnabbit.
You're supposed to be the one keeping me in check here.
That's true. But this is neither the time nor the place. That's one way to get an offense going.
Get your own Baron Geddon, summon a Sleepy Dragon. No polymorphs, no meteors. The only removal that Jinsoo has... Actually, Dragon Furies are dead.
Correct.
There are no spells left. It's going, guys, quite late to the party. Man, he did use that witching hour with the cube. Sometimes, man. Sometimes. Rugal quite deep in fatigue.
Concedes. He's just not going to get there with that hand.
Yeah, I mean, he knows that there's 2 cards left. Dragon Caller Alana would
Just doesn't have
fill
damage
up a board,
output.
no damage output, in fatigue. Lots of healing coming up, and Jinsoo has that slight smile on his face. I mean, Rugal, it effectively came down to that last witching hour. Second one, or the first one was used with the cube. Apologies for that. So last card ended up being naturalized, but 2 Sheeps in the pool, 2 Hadronox in the pool. He had to take the risk.
Of course.
I do feel, though, that he could have pushed damage on that turn where he could have put Jinsoo down to 3 health or 4 health.
You don't push him all the way down. But
You don't push him all the way down, but you find a nice balance to where next turn, all you need is 10, because a swing with Frostmourne plus a Death Coil would have been enough to kill him in that stage. The only problem there is that Baron Geddon, with a wide board like that, would have been able to heal him back up a lot. I think it's either you take that and hope that Baron Geddon's in sort of the bottom part of his deck, or you go for that, basically a 50-50 on resummoning Hadronox from your second Witching Hour. That's a tough one to call.
Cubing your own Lich King in that spot, though.
It's also another road to victory that could potentially get there,
Which is what he went.
Bottom.
Exactly. Which is what Rugal went with in that one. At that point, though, I mean, it's really tough to have a hand read. I mean, there's so much stuff that Jinsoo's going to be willing to hold on to for a very long time.
I must protect.
It kind of turns into a guessing game at that point, honestly.
Yeah.
It's really tough to have to make those calls, but sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and hope it works out for you. That time it didn't.
Well, we're going to move into game number 4. Jinsoo is going to play Even Warlock, and Rugal is going to be on the Taunt Druid once again. This one can get messy.
That's a kind
We have turned our thirst into our
One thing about Taunt Druid is that outside of Naturalize, speaking of the devil, they do not have ways to remove big threats early on in the game, and that's what Even Warlock specializes in. Having Mountain Giants, having Twilight Drakes, and hitting people.
Jinsoo is also in this list, protecting Skulking Geist. That is pretty consistent across the board for him.
Yeah. If you're trying to target Taunt Druid, that is a must-have.
And Rugal's drawing the one-cost stuff, and that's bad for him when you're drawing it and your opponent can geist it away.
Ten cards in hand. Got to play something. Looks like Doomsayer to me.
There's two schools of thought on the Geist known mechanism as well. If you know your opponent has Geist, are you more or less willing to burn naturalizes? Like,
more?
Like in this spot, if Jinsoo played a Doomsayer and said go, would you ever naturalize it?
I wonder.
Maybe. Because you burn 2 cards away from your opponent. You play around Skulking Geist.
What if they have a Mountain Giant afterwards, though?
That's the issue. And so Jinsoo, whoa,
He's looking for Mountain Giant. Doesn't find it.
Finds Volgar Homunculus.
Still pretty darn good.
Yeah. I don't know. I still think Doomsayer is...
I'm still liking the Doomsayer.
There's not many opportunities to find that outside of removing a board and then playing it afterwards to try and set up a power turn. But...
Wow.
Wow. That is the curve. Wild Growth, Oaken Summons into Nerve. She's just missing a Master O card and he's golden.
Oh, right. The spell stone's upgraded because of the Oaken Summons.
Yeah. But the Naturalize could have been good for overdrawing because if you overdraw a key tool, then...
Yeah. That's part of the purpose of Naturalize, but a lot of times you can just get both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
If your opponent plays a big thing, you get to kill a big thing, and you get to overdraw them.
Yeah. But even Warlock's not a deck that functions primarily on a single card, right? It's not like Q-Block where you rely very heavily on Blood River Gul'dan. Blood River Gul'dan is kind of a bonus.
Right.
Because your demons are not massive. They don't provide you with that huge benefit like Forward Lords and Doom Guards do. Yeah, of course they resummon a board, but it's not crucial to the game plan. It helps.
Jinsoo's got to be worried though.
He's just hoping that far left card is not Master O card.
I wonder.
It's still pretty darn good.
Dragon Hatcher, yeah.
Bubblies and yummies!
Fluffy, snuggle, pet.
All right, time to put on the pressure.
Yeah, this is bad news for Jinsoo.
This is a turn that he probably want to play Skulking Geist, but he can't.
I don't think he can.
Because Dragon Hatcher is just going to keep summoning big dragons.
Yep, I think if he does not kill this Dragon Hatcher, he's in a lot of trouble. And I think if he kills the Dragon Hatcher, he's in a lot of trouble.
Stubborn Gastropod plus a Spellstone probably is his best option.
Yep. Just try to get stuff off the board. Hope that Rugal is slow for a single turn. If Jinsoo is able to get one turn where Rugal is weak, I think he has a chance in this game. And this is looking like it might be that turn.
Summon a 3/6 and push a bunch of damage. That's why
Rugal
pointed at the face.
I love that because Rugal right now, his hand is incredibly weak. He's got board presence.
You do have to.
That's about it.
He does want to make sure that he thinks about removal options from Jinsoo's side. Does leaving up a 4/3 make Jinsoo's Defile better? Does leaving up a 4/3 make Hellfire Defile better?
I love this play.
Does putting him closer to 15 interrupt your game plan? I don't think so because you have Naturalize to push through. Does this affect his clock? He's put him down to 13 if he plays Hooked Reaver. You can Naturalize.
Swipe, game over.
Swipe, game over.
If your opponent Geists here, game over. Your opponent has to do something to impact the board in a meaningful way.
Reaver Spellstone's not an option.
I wonder.
A life tap.
Good turn for Jinsoo.
Yeah.
Bad turn for Rugal. Back-to-back turns. And suddenly, to me, Jinsoo's looking like he may be in the driver's seat.
Yeah. I mean, that was the defile play that I was talking about. That could have been prevented if he would have been left with a stronger board if he had made the trade.
True
But
story.
he had seen a Spellstone.
That's the key.
And it had been a while since, well, I guess not. He had played the Vulgar Homunculi.
And Jinsoo, I think Jinsoo needs to Geist here. Like, this is, your opponent's just been holding these cards. But it's so very, very likely that it's Naturalized, that it's Spellstone, that it's Hadronox, that it's Cube. You know, those are really the cards that come to mind.
Warriors of the frozen wastes. Rise.
It's very rare that I don't like playing a Lich King.
Was he going to burn a couple cards?
Which cards are relevant at this point?
I guess none. He's got Blood River Gul'dan. He's got Mountain Giant. He's got Hook Reaver. Well, second Hook Reaver is pretty big.
That's a big one. Yeah, when you burn a card, though, it's almost as if you just know that that's the bottom card of the deck at that point.
Yeah. And unless it goes to Fatigue, which it's pretty rare that this... Well, I don't know. I don't want to say pretty rare. It's pretty rare with this explosive of a start that this matchup goes to Fatigue.
What to do?
I guess Spellbreaker might be a big one to burn.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest burn card.
I wonder what he's thinking about here.
That's left anyway. Well, he's thinking about the Hook Reaver. That's right.
Yeah. But he saw one burned. Okay.
So Jinsoo wanted to play the Mountain Giant and Geist on the same turn. Yikes.
And Rugal has no choice.
Yeah, but Rugal.
Pushing hope.
Geist is so strong. And if your opponent has multiple one-cost spells in their hand when you play Geist,
yeah,
you just see their hand shred apart, and you're like, ah.
And I honestly think that's very close to checkmate because Rugal, his only card left is Swipe. Of course, Jinsoo doesn't know it. If he draws Hadronox, he needs an entire turn to play it and have it die. And Jinsoo is going to load up the board here. He is trying to find a way to maximize, and I was thinking Twilight Drake, but I guess he's just going to go anti-magic shell?
He wants to shell here because it's just, it's like impossible for Rugal to really do anything afterwards. Now, that being said, he can shell next turn. Like, he can trade in the Mountain Giant, healed up with Shroom Brewer, and actually utilize the anti-magic shell in the following turn. The thing about it is if he trades in the Mountain Giant, his thought was anti-magic shell, so my opponent can't swipe. So he has multiple ways to prevent that from happening still. And I think the Shroom Brewer is the stronger of the two.
Because that gives you more max damage going into the following turn, which he wants to end the game quickly. He doesn't want to give Rugal time to draw into Hadronox, play it, and then have it die. So this ends up maximizing his damage. I like this play much better than going with the anti-magic shell last time.
But you add another minion to that as well. And that card can't even be played at this moment.
Nope. Jinsoo's got all the tools in the world.
So Drake's
Sunkeeper.
Yep. Sun Fury.
Anti-magic shell. Or Sun Fury, sorry.
That's the most stuff.
You can also go Twilight Drake Dread Infernal.
So many possibilities.
Twilight Drake again, Great Main.
He can also just play Blood River Gul'dan.
Your opponent is, that's like nothing. They have nothing. For Jinsoo, it's just which one of these kills my opponent the quickest.
Twilight Drake again.
Yeah, does he even need the anti-magic shell? I mean, what left in Rugal deck actually even targets something of the opponent?
No Spellstones, no Naturalizes, because those were killed by the Skulking guy.
Both swipes have been used.
Both swipes have been used.
Yeah, he can just wait. He can wait till the most ideal time. It's just a matter of which one closes the door clicker.
Yeah.
double Sudden Fury and set up for what I'm guessing would end up as lethal next turn.
18, 19, 20, 21,
22 plus 10.
Plus 10, 32. Even with the hero power, he would have needed armor gain. Sleepy Dragon's going to put a stop to that.
That's just a delay of the inevitable.
Yeah, but Jinsoo does still have a Spellbreaker in his deck, so that would be lethal. The first one was burned. Or Black Knight. And that's it.
Black Knight shreds a 412. An anti-magic shell for an over 30 damage turn. Jinsoo crushes game 4 and moves on one match away from advancing to the top 8.
Man, that series, I think, lived up to my expectations. Both these players masterfully piloting some very tough control decks. And in the end, Jinsoo comes out on top. And he said in his video piece, losing this tournament never was even a thought that crossed his mind.
Not when you're winning games that way.
Nope.
That was savage.
Very calm and calculated from Jinsoo, and you can see there he moves into the winner's match of Group C. He will face the winner of Turna and Dog, whereas Rugal will have to fight his way through the elimination match and the decider match if he wants his shot at the quarterfinals on Sunday. Jinsoo puts himself in a great position, and he's standing by on stage for an interview with Cora.
That's right. I'm joined with the winner of our first match of the day. It is Jinsoo in a 3-1 victory over Rugal. First of all, congratulations, Jinsoo. Very, very impressive performance. How are you feeling right now? First match, you've got your win. How's it going, man?
우선 진수님 첫 경기 우승 축하드리고요. 지금 기분 어떠신가요?
손이 좀 떨리고 좋아요.
My hand is actually shaking, but I am very happy.
Oh, man. You've been such a pleasure to watch. Very soft-spoken, but very, very talented. And actually the first time we've gotten to see you playing here in the U.S. You actually finished second place in the Wild Open earlier this year. Do you feel that helped you prepare at all for this tournament?
이번 연도 초반에 야생전 결승전에 오셨잖아요. 그래서 이제 그때 왔을 때 경험이 도움이 됐나요?
어느 정도 덱을 짜는데 라인업을 구성하는데 도움이 됐던 것 같아요.
Definitely, it helped me thinking about the lineups that I want to be bringing, and it definitely helped.
Well, second place in the Wild Open now, making a run for the World Championships. Final question. In your bio, actually, you said that Tyler, the streamer and popular competitive player, was a big inspiration for you as a player. Is there anything that you want to say to Tyler? He gave you his bid, you were his champion of choice, and now you've won your first match of the day.
일단 사전에 타일러 선수를 좋아한다고 많은 걸 배웠다고 하는데, 그래서 이제 타일러가 이제 또 이제 진수님을 챔피언으로 선택했는데 타일러 선수에게 뭐 한마디 하고 싶으면?
항상 타일러가 좋은 덱으로만 방송을 해서 많이 배울 수 있었는데 아직 배울 게 더 많은 것 같아요.
It's like thank you, Tyler. Like as he plays a lot of good decks, I definitely learned a lot from him.
Awesome. Well, learning from one of the best, and now Jinsoo is making a run for the World Championships. Congratulations again. Thank you so much, and good luck moving forward. We will see Jinsoo later today in his winner's match for Group C, but that's going to be it for our first match of the day. Let's send it back to the casters and get match number 2 underway.